So you're thinking about San Marcos, California and moving to San Marcos, but then you got Escondido, California, and you can't decide which city, San Marcos or Escondido. On this video, we're going to be breaking it all down. Cost of living, what it truly costs to live in San Marcos, comparison to Escondido, and we're getting after it right now. What's up, amazing people? I am LeFore here with the Mortgage List team located out of San Diego, California. And if this is the first time to my channel and you're looking to learn everything about what it's like to eat, live, sleep, and play here in San Diego, then this is the channel for you. You definitely want to click that subscribe button, tap the little bell so you're reminded every single time we release a new video. Because honestly, we do it every single week. And honestly, my team and I are receiving phone calls every single day with people just like you thinking about making that move to somewhere in San Diego or San Marcos or Escondido. And if you're thinking about making that move, you definitely want to give us a call. Send us a text or an email, whatever is easiest for you, because we definitely got your back when moving to San Diego, Escondido, or San Marcos. Now, let's get after the top true differences and the costs that come in with San Marcos and Escondido. Okay, so first things first is kind of where are these two cities? So you got San Marcos, and San Marcos is going to be located right in the middle of Escondido, Fallbrook, Carlsbad, and Vista. We're going to be taking to the map in just a second to be able to truly show you where the city is actually located. And then you got Escondido. Well, Escondido is on the side of San Marcos and on the bottom of Valley Center. And then right before you get to Rancho Bernardo if you're going down the 15 freeway. So let's take it to the map so you can truly see where San Marcos and Escondido are actually located. All right, so now where is San Marcos? So you're looking at the map here. We're going to see that San Marcos honestly is about the majority of the 78 freeway. Kind of like cuts right down the line from one side to the other. And then you'll also notice that it actually covers up here over to the 5 freeway. It doesn't get touched fully to the 5 freeway. That's actually where you're going to end up finding like Encinitas. And then coming up to the top where you're actually going to end up finding like Carlsbad right over here. And then it is actually located right underneath Vista. So when you look at just a little bit further, you will end up finding that it is pretty much on the 78. The 78 freeway you can pretty much get off on, and then it'll take you to the left of San Marcos as well. And then on the flip side, it'll actually take you this way, which will actually take you right on the border of the 15 freeway, which is actually where you're going to end up finding a majority of Escondido as well. So as you can see, San Marcos and Escondido are pretty large cities. In general, Escondido, you will find that it does actually take you down here to the 15, all the way over here to Rancho Bernardo, which is its neighboring cities, and then does actually take you over here to San Pasqual. You'll notice that actually when we go into San Pasqual Valley Road, while that is still technically Escondido, you will find that like the Union Elementary School District do actually have its own district. Then of course you come over here, you'll find that it is actually based off of the 78 right over here, but you will also find that as you go into the 78, it actually stops right here and then turns into East Lincoln, which is actually how you're going to be able to travel down East Lincoln over here to El Norte right over here, which is actually how you're going to be able to travel to the very top and be able to get to Valley Center, which is actually right up over here. So it's really important to be able to see that as San Marcos and Escondido are actually neighboring cities, you will end up finding that Escondido in itself is actually a pretty large city when you kind of just look at it overall when comparing it to San Marcos. And that's actually where we're going to find San Marcos right over here. So that way you can truly see that they are really neighboring cities, but the cost of living from San Marcos to Escondido are definitely very different. And so we're going to get after the first thing that we're going to be talking about, and that's the housing prices. Now, let's leave the map and let's go to the housing prices. So let's compare the cities when it comes to the housing. So right now, when you look at the homes that are for sale in San Marcos, you're going to be looking at about 25 homes for sale. And we're looking at just regular houses, not including condos or manufactured homes. In San Marcos, you're going to end up finding quite a bit of manufactured homes. They have manufactured home communities, whether you do or do not own the land. They have actually quite a bit of those. And so you do also find that in Escondido, just not as much. In Escondido, you will find a lot more communities when you don't own the land as much. There's a couple of family parks where it's kind of, you don't have to have an age restriction. So it's, per se, the family that can actually live there. And then of course, there are the 55 and over communities when it comes to manufactured homes as well. When you start comparing what is happening right now in the homes that are for sale in San Marcos, and then when you start comparing it to Escondido, there is actually more homes for sale in Escondido right now in comparison to San Marcos. You also find that the cost of living, meaning that the house price, is actually lower in Escondido than it is in San Marcos. So while right now there is 25 homes for sale at this moment in San Marcos, there is a total of 74 homes for sale right now in Escondido. So in comparing the two, you are actually going to find triple the amount of homes for sale in Escondido. The other piece of information that you definitely want to know is that when it comes to the home sales in San Marcos, they are actually, of course, just like Escondido, in selling above what they're actually listed for. You will end up finding that the homes are priced for about $600,000, but do not sell for $600,000. They actually do end up selling for about $622,000 is what's going average right now on Redfin as well as on realtor.com. The other piece that you want to know is that in San Marcos, you are seeing an appreciation happening. So in the past, 2019 to kind of today, you were seeing like 4.9% in appreciation. And then now in 2021, closer to 6.5 appreciation, and of course, trending upwards here in the COVID pandemic experience right now here in 2021. While the market in general is actually trending upward, in Escondido, you're actually finding that home prices are actually going higher than what they are in San Marcos, kind of like on the appreciation rating meaning. So in Escondido, you're actually going to find that the houses are actually increasing by about 8.2% in appreciation when it comes to the home values, where they used to be at about $595,000, which was what you were typically looking for. Now they're actually not closing at $595,000, meaning that they put their house for the market, and then by the time that they find the buyer, close with giving away their keys for their property, it's not selling for the $595,000. They're actually selling for a higher amount. And that amount, based off of realtor.org, is actually showing at $650,000, assuming that the homes that are actually on the market are actually taking a lot less time to actually sell. So a lot of the time you'll end up finding that, different real estate agents will post on different, social media platforms referencing that the home sold in one day. Keep in mind that it didn't sell in one day. They found the buyer in one day. With that being said, is that in San Marcos, the time in which the property actually went on the market to the time where the keys got transferred to that new buyer is actually happening on average at 42 days right now in the month of February and March of 2021. In comparison to what it was in 2019, you were looking at closer to about 60 days. And then you were looking at 2020, and now you were looking at 50 days. So it's definitely gone down with regards to how many days it takes to be able to close a loan. That also has to do with the fact that when you were looking at the details as to kind of like the pandemic with all of the really low interest rates environment, is that it took a little bit longer to be able to close a loan back in 2020 with those lower interest rates. Same detail when it comes to Escondido. As the homes are appreciating, of course, over 8% when it comes to the value, they are not selling for the $595,000. As of right now, when I was looking for new homes for my clients under $550,000, there was only 3 houses ranging between $524,000 to $550,000. And within those 3 homes, they had just put them on the market. And then there was one home that are not even calculating in this amount because it's talking about how it's listed at literally under $400,000, and it was definitely a missed typo because it should have been calculated way higher than $700,000 where it was located. So when you start looking at the actual home prices, when it comes to like San Marcos to Escondido, you will of course end up paying a little bit more in San Marcos. The other piece of information that you want to be able to know is that in Escondido, while it does take, again, just as long to be able to sell a house, when it comes to Escondido, they're actually selling just a little bit faster by one day. So when you start comparing 2019 to 2020 and then to 2021, right now we are definitely in a seller's market. And of course, you will end up finding that that home of what it was listed for is not what it ends up being sold for, especially in San Marcos and in Escondido, both being very desirable cities, affordable cities within the county of San Diego. So in looking at the home values in comparison, so you look at San Marcos and you're looking at about $601,500, which is where it first starts being listed at. And then by the time it finishes the whole process, how much it's actually selling for is about $660,000. Then you compare that to Escondido. Escondido homes are actually starting at $595,000, and then they end up closing at about $650,000. So while it's pretty relevant, pretty close in amounts, it is still showing a little bit higher in San Marcos. A lot of the desire does come from the school ratings that you do end up finding in San Marcos that are not as great in Escondido. While we do have some great schools in general, you will find overall in San Marcos that the majority of the schools are what's being desired and why a lot of people are in general moving to San Marcos. However, keep in mind, as the cost of living is the form of our video today, you will find that a lot of people that I have come across, a lot of my clients, honestly can't afford San Marcos. It is a bit higher cost of living. While you're talking about $660,000 in a price of a house, that's not the average house. And you end up finding that a lot of the homes end up selling for a bit higher. There are some of the smaller homes that you end up finding, and then while there are a lot of manufactured homes, that is also deriving into that $660,000 average price when it comes to San Diego and specifically in San Marcos. And then when you start looking at the actual average house when it comes to like a closer neighborhood to that San Marcos school, you will end up finding that you end up having to spend the higher of $600,000 into the $700,000 price range to be able to be in San Marcos for the school. So when in talking about the schools, it's really important to be able to kind of show you where those actual schools are. So as we're talking about the school, it's kind of really important to be able to see kind of what those ratings of the schools are. So here we are talking about San Marcos, being able to see that the majority of the schools are actually 9, 8, and 7. Then you have a couple of them that are down here in the 7s and the 6s. But then you look at Escondido. So in Escondido in general, you're going to end up finding that a lot of the schools are actually 7 and 6s in comparison to what we were just looking at when it comes to San Marcos. So then we got one in Richland at 8. And then of course we still have San Pasqual Union Academy, the elementary school as well. So this is honestly some of the desired amounts and desired reasons why a lot of clients do move into San Marcos. So we've been talking a whole bunch of information about the home prices, but what if you're not ready to buy and you're thinking about renting? So where is it less expensive or maybe more affordable when it comes to renting, San Marcos or Escondido? So first off, you're going to be looking at 3 bedrooms. So 3 bedrooms versus 4 bedrooms when it comes to the 2 different cities. You are going to end up finding that a 3 bedroom in San Marcos is at $2,525 per month, whereas a 4 bedroom is going to be at $3,090 per month in San Marcos. In comparison to Escondido, you will actually finding that it's just a little bit less expensive. While you find that in San Marcos, only about 38.6% of people are actually renting, in Escondido, it's very different. You will actually find almost 50% at 48.7% of people are actually renting in Escondido. You are going to find that in Escondido, a 3 bedroom is going to be at $2,458 per month. And then in comparison to a 4 bedroom is going to be about $3,018 per month. So when we start comparing the two, I mean, they're really not that far off. We're talking about less than $100 in comparing to San Marcos versus Escondido. So if that's the case, you may want to think about renting in San Marcos to be able to decide that that's going to be where you want to live. The other thing that you want to remember though is that as we talked about the cost of living, the house when you do buy it will end up being a bit more expensive. However, the other detail that you need to remember is that in San Marcos, you'll actually end up finding that less than 2% of people can actually find a place to live. And so the problem with that is that people don't leave San Marcos. And because they don't leave San Marcos, it ends up being really hard to find somewhere to rent. And then when you do find somewhere to rent, you end up paying a little bit higher just because there's not a lot of rentals out there. So in San Marcos, you're going to find homes in 92069 zip code and 92068 zip code. And then homes in Escondido, you're going to find them in 92027, 92025, 92026, and 92029. So a couple more zip codes just mainly because you do end up finding that Escondido does have 150,000 plus population. So our city is a little bit larger. So you do have a couple other extra zip codes when it comes to that. Okay, so now that we've talked all about housing prices, rental prices, how long it's going to take you to truly just find your house, let's get on to the next topic, which that's number 2, and that's utilities. All right, so when it comes to utilities, it's going to be kind of standard when it comes to both cities. And so the only reason why I say this is that they're both going to be connected to San Diego Gas and Electric. So gas, electric, both on the same payments. And so with that, you're going to end up finding roughly kind of the same. And so the difference is going to be on how hot it ends up being. In general, you're going to end up finding, of course, Escondido is going to be a little bit hotter. And so when you start comparing kind of the two cities, you will end up finding that the heat will come to Escondido, but then you kind of travel that 15 freeway to the 78, hop off in San Marcos, you will end up finding that while it's 85 in Escondido, it's closer to like 70 to 75 in San Marcos. So you kind of get more of that chill over in San Marcos. And with that, you will end up finding that because of that heat, you will end up having that high of a gas and electric bill. The one thing that you kind of want to remember is that in California, it's really common that we have solar on our houses. And in general, in Escondido and in San Marcos, it is equally just as common. However, in San Marcos, you'll notice that because you don't get as much sun, you will end up also finding that you'll probably end up having a little bit more of a bill if the two houses were technically located in both spots, so one in Escondido and one in San Marcos, because you just don't get that much heat. The other difference is that because you do get a bit more sun in Escondido, you will end up finding that your bill is a bit more expensive. So assuming that you don't have solar, gas and electric can be pretty expensive. So one thing that you want to just kind of notate for your future when you do end up finding your home here in San Diego is that they do actually do this thing, it's called 𝐒𝐵, where you end up adding up all of your last 6 months of payments and then dividing them by 6, and then that ends up being your next monthly payment that you do end up paying for the next further 6 months. You could do that also in San Marcos and in Escondido. The difference is that you're going to end up just being able to see that the payment in San Marcos may be a little bit less expensive just because of the heat. The other thing you want to remember is that you still got to pay garbage and water, and that's going to go back to the city. So city of Escondido or city of San Marcos, you're going to end up needing to pay either of those. Roughly, both of them are going to be about the same. So in San Marcos, you're going to end up finding that is a little bit less expensive that I have found from my clients that live in San Marcos, ranging anywhere between about $90 to about $110 a month. Then in Escondido, you will end up finding that they are a little bit more expensive. And I'm talking like $97, which is kind of like my mom's bill, all the way up to about $125 to $150, depending on your water usage. So if you got a pool in the backyard, you will end up finding that that water and garbage bill is a little bit more expensive because you got to, do that autofill to be able to get it back up to where it's supposed to be in your pool in the backyard. So just a little food for thought. So you got your gas and electric when it comes to SDG&E, and then you got your garbage and water when it comes to the city of San Marcos or the city of Escondido. Now let's talk about number 3, and that's transportation. Transportation is going to be pretty much about the same. So as we saw on the map, Escondido is pretty large of a city. San Marcos just equally as large. 80% of people here in San Diego are driving cars. So realistically, you're not going to be driving just to go to the park. Sometimes, yes, I drive to the park, but you will be driving a lot when it comes to work. A lot of the time you'll be living in Escondido and you may not be actually driving to your job in Escondido. It may actually be located off the 15 freeway somewhere in San Diego, Rancho Bernardo, Mira Mesa, off of Balboa, things like that. Same thing when it comes to San Marcos. A lot of the time you don't actually work in San Marcos and you actually work a little bit farther off that 15, or maybe you're working on the flip side up the 15 and you're going over to Riverside County. Either way, you're definitely going to need a car. Another thing that we talked about was solar. So you will also find a lot of electric vehicles here in San Marcos and Escondido. So on average, the gas prices are about $2.89 in general for the national average. However, when it comes to Escondido, you're going to end up finding that that national average is a lot lower than our actual gas prices. So gas prices here in Escondido are equivalent to about what they are in San Marcos. You're going to be looking at about $2.89 to $3.02. Some cases you're going to find them right now, they're gone up a little bit. So you're talking about like $3.53. And then you go to San Marcos, you're going to end up finding them a little bit more expensive at about $4.09. Depending on where you are in relation to the actual freeway. Because the closer you are to the freeway, regardless whether you're in Escondido or San Marcos, you will end up finding that the gas prices are a little bit more expensive. Same thing when it comes to coming down from Valley Center. If you're coming down from Valley Center, you're coming into Escondido, that first gas station is going to be the most expensive because it's the first gas station that you're going to see coming from Valley Center down the road. And in Valley Center, they only got 3 gas stations. So whereas there, you're going to end up finding just honestly the more expensive one. In general, in Escondido and San Marcos, you will find that there is a whole bunch of gas stations. So everybody's always trying to compete for your business. So with my car, I have a GMC Yukon. So I actually do end up spending a bit of money when it comes to gas, but I'm also a softball coach. So it's kind of important to have all of that extra space. And then when you look at the gas prices right now that are about $3.53, all the way up to about $3.89, depending on where you're on the side of town, you will end up finding that you do spend, for me, about $85 to $97 on gas per week. And dependent how many times you're taking your kids to school, or you're driving across town, or maybe just how many times you're getting yourself to the softball field. Things like that are definitely going to vary when it comes to the gas prices here in San Marcos and in Escondido. Now, next on our list, number 4 is my favorite, cost of food. And so why is it my favorite? Because I love food and a total foodie. So I love being able to check out all the places in Escondido and San Marcos. The big difference, though, is that I have found kind of my favorites are in Escondido. There's a really amazing sushi huku spot called Sushi Huku in San Marcos, and that is my all-time favorite sushi joint. So when you start looking at the cost of food overall when it comes to San Marcos and Escondido, they're going to be relatively about the same. Average cost of food is about $15 per person. With that being said, it's myself, my husband, and my 2 little girls. Odds are we are not getting out of there with 15 times 4 is 60 bucks. I mean, like, let's be real. That's not happening. So with that being said, you're going to end up finding for us, it's going to be closer to like $100 to $150, including your tip, is most likely what you're going to end up spending when you go out to food and go out to eat. The difference is though that of course you can always go to like your taco shop or your drive-through, or come by and pick up, and so that way per se you're not tipping, and then you're going to end up spending a little bit less money. But in general, cost of food is a bit more expensive. And in general, the other detail that you want to remember is that the closer I have found, kind of the closer to per se like Carlsbad in comparison to like San Marcos, kind of like that borderline, you end up finding that the food is a little bit more expensive. Like I have found that some places that are located off of Palomar Airport Road are way more expensive for like the hamburger than they would have been if I was like closer to like San Marcos and Escondido. I don't know if that's the reason, because Carlsbad is technically a higher cost of living than San Marcos. And so therefore, because it's closer to Carlsbad, is that why the food is that expensive? I'm not quite sure, but that is my experience of what I've been finding. So you just want to be able to know that, one, it's in your budget. Two, if you want to go there, make sure that you check Yelp, that it's a good place to spend your money. And then two, that there's a whole bunch of spots to be able to eat here in Escondido and in San Marcos and in general in San Diego County. So you definitely want to check them out. And next on our list is my favorite, another one of my favorites, taxes, number 5. Okay, so look, taxes in general, we know we live in San Diego, we got to pay a sunshine tax. We know it's expensive, right? Okay, so in general, you are going to find that, let's start off with property taxes. Property taxes in general for San Diego County, you're going to be finding them at about 1.25% overall for a home price. But the big thing is that depending on when your home was built, will depend on whether it has additional special assessments. There are some homes that were built in 07, 08, and 09, and actually even some that were built in 2000 in San Marcos that do have special assessments, and which means that they pay extra taxes. And then that same aspect does apply in Escondido, where they do also pay for special assessments, such as like Eureka Springs, Harmony Grove. Those are also located in Escondido. You do have special assessments in both of those communities. So just like you pay your regular taxes for the county, you got to pay a little bit extra, which is the Melrose, to be able to support kind of like when they were building up the land, be able to build the houses, and then made the schools that were really close to them, fire departments, things like that. That's where those Melrose taxes go. Same thing applies to San Marcos or Escondido. They go to the same spot. One thing that you want to remember though is that in some cases, the Melrose will go to additional things, or they will not go to everything. It just depends on how it was all set up. So sales tax in San Diego is at 7.8%. Definitely higher than the US average at 7.3%. Remember, sunshine tax, we got to pay for it. And then we got the income tax, again, a whopping 9.3%. And then whereas the US average is at 4.6%. Again, sunshine tax, sometimes we just got to be happy with that extra sunshine that we get here in San Diego, because we seriously get like 12 to 14 days of rain. And we're like 30 to 45 minutes away from the snow. So we're kind of really enjoying that sunshine. Going back to the property taxes, you will end up finding that in some cases, you'll find property taxes that are a little bit lower, like at 1.02%. So it just kind of depends on how old your home is, or when it was built, not meaning old, but when it was actually built. So if it was built in 2000 or built in 1980, you're probably going to have a little bit less taxes. Also keep in mind that if you're selling one house and then buying another, you can actually even take over those taxes, like the percentage taxes from that house to the new one. So it's just a little food for thought as you are thinking about selling your house, just a little option to be able to save you a little bit of money. As you're thinking about those property taxes, next thing that you want to remember is the fact that you typically will have an escrow account. So what's an escrow account? Escrow account, think of it kind of like a bank account where it saves up your taxes and your insurance, and in some cases your flood insurance. Mortgage insurance is inside of your escrow account, but immediately goes out to go pay the mortgage insurance company. So when it comes to your escrow account, it does actually accumulate every single month as you pay your mortgage. And then in San Diego, we owe taxes 2 times a year. Due in November, late in December, and then due in March and late in April. So it's just a little food for thought as those are actually accumulated on a monthly basis. We do make sure that you do have enough money in that escrow account to be able to pay them out 2 times a year. Home insurance is a little bit different. We only pay out home insurance 1 time a year, and that's the one time of which when you first got that policy. As you're thinking about the escrow account, it is all based off of the county, also as to when the actual insurance is actually due. So when you do end up closing, you may end up requiring a little bit extra for those escrow accounts, little extra reserves, little extra money inside of those escrow accounts. In some cases, you may not require as much, depending on when you actually end up closing. So as we're discussing San Marcos and Escondido, there's a lot different details that you want to make sure that before you actually put your deposit down, write your first offer, or even thinking about go to San Marcos or Escondido, you really got to dive in to determine whether the housing is available or the housing is even affordable, or maybe the commute is a little bit too far. Maybe you're out on the skirts of San Marcos versus the kind of like the border of Escondido. It depends on how far you're going to work. So when you're ready to make that move, you definitely got to reach out to us. Give us a call, send us a text, or an email, whatever easiest for you. You definitely got to reach out to us because we got your back when moving to Escondido, San Marcos, and San Diego. And don't forget, on this channel, we release videos every single week talking about what it's like to eat, live, sleep, and play here in San Diego, San Marcos, and Escondido. You want to make sure that you click the subscribe button, tap that little bell so you're reminded every single time we release a new video, because honestly, we do it every single week. And hey, right now you're checking out some new videos that are coming your way that are talking about what it's like to hang out here in San Diego and move here when you're ready. Make sure that you click on those videos so that way you get more informed, and when you're ready, make sure you reach out to us. Have a great day and see you on the next one.